Carrying on now with the next lesson plan. This is from KG2. We looked at KG1 in the previous session along with the grade 9 lesson plan. This is also from Basira School in Mombasa, Kenya. The class ages 4 to 5. The theme is water. Sub-theme is the use of water. Objectives indicated there as number, because all of this is combined. You know, this is a 3-hour timetable, 3-hour lesson plan, where number work, science, language, IRE, that's Islamic religious education, and social life skills are included. So the number work, carrying out the activity of filling and emptying containers to find out how many small containers would fill a big container. In science, the condition necessary for the growth of plants, because it's about water. Language, read and write, 4- and 5-letter words, wash, cook, clean, drink, well, river. And the Islamization point by those who sent in this lesson plan was that they would mention the story of the well of Zamzam and how it was formed. And in IRE, how to perform ablution in the most perfect manner, and identifying the hard parts and avoid wastage of water. And then social or life skill component that they have at the end. Wash a handkerchief and identify its use. And we're dealing with the importance of cleanliness in Islam. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. This lesson plan is more detailed: teaching, learning activities, experimenting, memorizing, etc., demonstrating, observing, teaching, learning resources, Holy Quran. And here I would say Holy Quran, please let us avoid this term. You know, we have the noble Quran, the magnificent Quran, Quran al-Azim, Quran al-Kareem. These are the terms used by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to describe the Quran. And none of the terms among them does he use holy, al-Muqaddas. He doesn't use this term in reference to the Quran. So this Holy Quran is a common imitation of the Christian Holy Bible, because they call their book the Holy Bible. Muslims, not to be outdone, have come up with the Holy Quran and the Holy Prophet and such. So let us avoid that phraseology. The Quran is sufficient. You want to add something to it, the noble Quran. And Hadith, then in the resources, chalk, it should be really chalk, no chalks, blackboard, pencils, etc. Here I would add, the first principle, learning resources, visual environment, again, principle 1, images or models, for example, pictures of kids making wudu, and why we say kids as opposed to adults, because this is a kids class. The images they see, they should be able to relate to. It shouldn't be, this is an adult thing, this is our thing too. So we try to make the images as age appropriate as possible. And second principle from the 1001 inventions, we can choose, one which has to do with water. We have the water wheel, we have the water clock. We have different inventions that Muslims have made, concerning water. So this can be brought in. And again, the reference is made there, Holy Quran again, and verses mentioned, mainly talking about rain coming down from the heavens. So let us look now at the implementation, or they call it lesson development. Next slide, please. Okay, the first element is what is referred to as number work. Teacher explains by filling and emptying, demonstrating. The children are listening and observing. Here, principle 3, we choose a Quranic verse which refers to filling, emptying. Allah talks about the water filling the valleys, and so, an image of the rain coming and filling a valley, causing a river. We can use that image along with the relevant Quranic verse which addresses that. Step 2, the teacher uses different containers, so to see which one holds the most. Let the children choose. We're learning about big and small, and how many small whatevers fit in a big whatever. So they're gaining some sense of number. And in hadith, of course, we can bring in the hadith concerning water, where the Prophet ﷺ had said that you should not waste water even if you're on the bank of a river. Even though there's all this water there, etc., that doesn't become a go-ahead. We don't have from it a go-ahead to waste, regardless. Right, so the principle of wastage is one which is beyond the circumstance, whether you have an excessive amount or plenty available. That doesn't become justification for wasting. Also, so that was principle 4. We added principle 3 in the Quranic verse. We said earlier we'd have images. That was principle 1. Of course, oral greetings, etc. is now, we know we're beginning with that. But then the images in the classroom concerning water, we try to choose images which support the Islamic culture, Islamic practices, etc. Wudu being the most obvious one. People making wudu, kids making wudu. We mentioned that was principle 1. And we mentioned principle 2 also, the water clock inventions of Muslims. So we have here principle 3, principle 4, and even this issue of not wasting water, that's also principle 5. So the hadith contains both principle 4 and the moral principle 5 of not being wasteful, And of course there's the Quranic verse, we don't need to go into that here, but know it as a teacher, that Allah describes the wasteful as being brethren of the devils. So it's definitely a state we want to avoid. Step 3, give them some work to do in their books. Children do the work. Then, continue on with water, they shift into science. A teacher introduces the lesson with the verse. This is the teacher who prepared this lesson plan had suggested. Surah Taha 53, and Allah says there, and He has sent down water or rain from the sky. And the sister who put this together mentioned that we should explain the verse. The teacher let them do it practically. Of course, you can create rain in the classroom, whatever, through using props, etc. And we could make a model where the rain falls and it goes in streams and it goes and makes a lake and a waterfall, and all of this, could be used to illustrate, this Quranic verse. And the children, of course, can participate in it. They can be physically involved. So we have the Quranic verse here. That's also principle 3 in place. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. The step 2 is continuing with science. The teacher names the conditions necessary for growth of plant, for a plant to grow, the soil and the seed, and then you need rain. So you deal with rain again, the verse on rain, that's principle 3 applicable here. And then also step 3 connected is the sources of water. Where does water come from? And again, the verses, Quranic verses, which refers to the various lakes, the rivers, the springs, the rain. Then the teacher writes on the board words about water and let the children copy them in their books. So we're carrying on to language now. That's transition into the language. Step 1, the teacher writes different words, 4 to 5 letters, words on the boards for the children to read. Wash, cook, well, river. And then images, I suggested here again, images come up for the well of Zamzam. We don't need to go into the story of the well of Zamzam, but we can go into the image of the well of Zamzam connected to Hajj, and perhaps the story could be saved for IRE, or Islamic Religious Education sector. This is how the lesson plan is devised there in Kenya. Step 2 from the language, teacher distributes to each flashcards, I guess, of those words, and lets each one reads it. She tells the story of Zamzam and how it was formed. The teacher who prepared this suggested bringing the story in there. And again, this goes back to whether it is appropriate. They have normally what they call a story time, and it would be introduced there, or it could be saved for the IRE. And of course, when we're dealing with the issue of the well of Zamzam, we try to take principle 5, moral message, out of it. Right? The story, of course, will be mentioned from the hadith, so that's also principle 4. And we mentioned the verses for principle 3 already. Okay, next slide. So in their syllabus, they have a section called Islamic Religious Education. And some of the teachers were asking, well, if we're including Islamic views and thoughts, etc., in the way we're doing it in the other subjects, do we actually need a period or a section which we're going to call Islamic Religious Education? Do you really need it? Well, I felt that I felt that it can still be there, because there may be some things like wudu. In this section here, they're focusing on wudu. So they mentioned the verse. They could have given the story on Zamzam here. And then they go into description of wudu. This is something which the kids need to be taught, shown properly how to do it. Now, in their lesson plan, they're mentioning that the teacher identifies the fard parts of wudu to demonstrate to them. Teachers let them do it practically. And the verse, of course, there, what you do. And there's a song they have that they sing, this is the way I wash my face when I perform wudu. So that's a local song developed, which could be shared with others and used to facilitate the learning of wudu. And the issue, though, of the fard parts of wudu, I just show them wudu. You know, we don't need to make any distinction. I mean, wudu is basically wudu. You know, when we're doing salah, we have the fard parts and sunnah parts. But for wudu, basically, I mean, if you're going to say that washing face, you're not including the mouth because it's not mentioned in the Quran. No, we're going to teach them wudu as wudu is done. You wash your hands, you wash your mouth. Yeah, of course, washing their nose may be difficult, the difficulty of it, but they go through the motion. And then they wash their face. So we teach them the complete wudu. Wash the arms, then wipe the head and the ears, then wash their feet. I mean, this really doesn't involve so much. I don't think we need to limit it to what we may call the fard parts of wudu. Then the next section, actually, the social life skill in the left column of activity area, that should be next to step 1, right? Should be up next to step 1 because it's out of position. Anyway, so this is the last section of the lesson plan, and there the teacher introduces the lesson with a hadith. Cleanliness is half of faith. and explain the meaning of it. But I mean, again, for this age, the depth of meaning is beyond them. I think enough that cleanliness is half of faith. You should keep yourself clean. It's part of your faith. As a Muslim, I mean, even the understanding of faith and part of it and all this is enough. You mentioned the hadith, but the focus is that it's from Islam. It's a part of Islam because here we know that when the Prophet ﷺ used the term, and Allah uses the term Iman by itself, it refers also to Islam. It refers to Islam by itself, it refers to Iman. And it's only when they're mentioned together that you distinguish between Iman and Islam. So it's enough to say that cleaning oneself is part of Islam. They know Islam, this is our way, what we do, we pray, and all of that is Islam. And cleaning oneself is part of it. That's why we clean ourselves before we pray. So that's enough to give them that understanding. And step 2, the teacher explains the use of a handkerchief, and demonstrates how to wash it. Each student should wash a handkerchief and dry it. Yeah, I guess this is the learning physical involvement in cleaning up. And then the last point, again, not to misuse or waste water. And the same hadith we mentioned earlier concerning not to waste water even if you are beside a river or you're in a river or in running water. And this is the area, actually, that's a moral principle. This is an area in which kids oftentimes are delinquent in, wasting water. They like to play in it. And you often find them wasting it. So this is an area that it's worth giving extra time to make sure they've grasped the proper way of dealing with water. Okay. Now we're moving on to KG3 lesson plan, again from Basira School in Mombasa, Kenya. The new topic here is our home. That's the theme, our home. And the subtopics are the utensils, which are used in the home. Objectives: by the end of the lesson, the learner should be able to draw and name kitchen utensils. So you'll have charts and pictures, etc. And I don't know about the high flyer series that they mentioned as a reference, page 32 on the Quran. I don't have it available to check it. Let's move on to the next slide. This is KG3, ages 6. So the class is basically half an hour, 5 minutes. They're asking questions, 5 minutes review, 10 minutes demonstration, and 10 minutes exercise. So what they had here was teacher asked the pupils oral questions, of course, children and their activities, they answer their oral questions, I would have asked, well, what are the oral questions? What are these oral questions? This lesson plan is a bit vague. Teacher revised the children the previous work. Again, what is the previous work? Because what are the oral questions will determine how we're going to Islamize in terms of those questions. What questions are you using? And previous work, again, Islamization is going to depend on whatever that previous work was. What are the main Islamic points that we took from the previous lesson that could be reviewed at this point? Then into the teacher demonstrates to the children a chart of kitchen utensils and taking some things about utensils from Surah Naba, verse 34. That's, of course, principle 3, that's mentioning the Quranic verse. They suggest that the students recite the verse with her, with the teacher, For me, I think here we have images. This is where we focus on the pictures and the images, and these pictures and images should be in, again, Islamic context, because we're talking about glasses, dishes. There are verses which mentioned in the Quran, as well as the images used could depict the family sitting at the table eating, and all the various utensils are visible. They're in the hands of the members of the family. So we're showing them the family eating together, which is a good principle. And then, identifying the various utensils of the kitchen or the home. Then they have an Islamic intro here. Teacher introduces a hadith regarding drinking. لا يشربن أحدكم قائما. That no one should drink while standing. So this becomes an etiquette. Part of the Islamic etiquette is that you sit when you drink. I mean, it's not forbidden to drink standing, although this hadith seems to indicate that, but it's a strong recommendation, we know, because Prophet ﷺ did drink on occasion standing. Ali ibn Abi Talib also drank and standing and challenged those who were claiming that it's obligatory. So we know that it's not obligatory, but it's strongly recommended. It's better to eat and to drink while sitting. So that's a hadith. That's principle number 4. And it being a part of Islamic character, moral character, we can say it also includes number 5. That's no, please go back for a minute. Yeah, before we look at our last lesson plan. Here we didn't have principle 5 clearly. This can be introduced because you're dealing with 6-year-olds. It can be introduced through a story which is related to some of the images that you are showing them on utensils, right? Utensils at home, perhaps because utensils, eating, etc., then the other area of the eating habits could be brought in, about eating what's in front of you, eating with your right hand, all of these. This is hadith for the hadiths. And also, in the image or the picture which is used, the story can be told, which have to do with utensils in the kitchen. What tends to happen with the kids, they go into the kitchen, maybe they take a glass they shouldn't have, it falls from them and it breaks, and they run and hide, or they don't tell their mother about it. Mother finds the broken glass, asks who did it, and asks the kids, did you do it? Did you do it? And of course, oftentimes the children who did it would say, no, I didn't do it. But again, maybe in the story, the person who did it maybe steps on the glass, when it had broken and it run off and had cut themselves, so they're bleeding. So it became obvious that they were the ones who did it. And, the mom is not happy that they were not telling the truth. So that becomes a moral story. Not necessarily that every time you do bad, something bad's going to happen to you, but just focusing more on the issue of telling the truth. So we could bring in a moral principle through that channel. So we brought in principle number 5. Okay, let's move on now to our last lesson plan. And this one is from Unity School in Chennai, India. Girls 8 to 9 years old, standard 3, math, addition. This is one of the common areas that people like to ask, how do we Islamize mathematics? So the objective here is it's an addition topic. Objective, addition of a one-digit number to another, 2 plus 2 equals 4, for example. So we Islamize this, principle 1. We start with Basmala, of course, use images with Islamic themes, again, with the numbers. And principle 2, the invention of Arabic numbers. You can show an image of a 2 and what 2 is in Arabic. So it's just the Arabic 2 which is turned on its side to get the 2 we now know in English. Or they're called Arabic numerals. You can tell them they're called Arabic numerals. So we've given them the historical relevance, principle 2, there. Principle 3, Allah stated, do your prayer regularly to remember me. Okay, now where does that become relevant? Well, it becomes relevant because you've given them an example of addition. You're saying if one prays 2 rak'at sunnah of Fajr, 2 rak'at of fard, what was the total number of rak'at prayed? So we have got 2 plus 2 equals 4. And we've put it in a Islamic package here. And the verse, of course, pray regularly. So this is the idea. You do your sunnah, you do your fard, so and so. And then principle 4, hadith. Prophet ﷺ had 3 daughters and 3 sons. So how many children in total did he have? 6. So we've brought in hadith there, showing them numbers and addition, right? Then the moral message, principle 5, we use a word problem story to bring out the moral message, because at that age, you're doing a lot of storytelling anyway. Ali has 2 riyals and loses 1 in the playground, so his mother Sarah gives him another 2 riyals. Later that day, a classmate, Khalid, finds the lost riyals and returns it to Ali. So what is the total number of riyals that Ali now has? 4. What's the moral? Khalid found the lost riyals. Now kids at that age, again, 8 and 9, when they find things, they follow the principle, finders keepers, losers weepers. You found something, you want to keep it. It's mine, I found it. But no, it actually belongs to somebody. So Khalid gives the lost riyal back to Ali because he knows it was Ali's, it wasn't his. So here's your moral message being conveyed. You can even expand on the story and, Khalid gets a reward for giving it back to Ali, whatever. Ali gives him back one of them or whatever, shares it with them. Other things can be elaborated upon to increase the moral value. And, as a last moral principle for these adding of integers, for example, you have a moral message regarding Allah's oneness. We teach them 1 + 1 + 1 = 3, right? And you tell them there's some people who say that 1 + 1 + 1 = 1. Is that right? And of course they say, no, it's not right. It's incorrect. So this idea that you can have 1 + 1 + 1 and it all equals 1 is not right. And for 8 and 9-year-olds, you can tell them, yes, Christians believe that God is made up of a father, a son, and an angel-like spirit. And they say all these three are one. That's not right. Allah, God, is one. He's not anybody's father. He created everybody. So we can bring in principle 5 here. This is moral message with regards to our relationship with God. So that concludes our practical application. If you'd like to ask some questions again, now we've come to the end. You're welcome to do so. And again, we would like to encourage you to participate with us in creating a library of lesson plans. If your school is interested, you can get copies of this course, play it back, watch it together with the rest of the staff, and make a commitment to achieve this goal. And we have a website, a homeschooling website, which we're in the process of developing. And we welcome the lesson plans to be sent to us. We'll arrange to have them reviewed, and those that are beneficial, that the job has been done properly, etc., or as good as, to the point of being useful, then, we'll post them and people will be able to download them, as they need them. So we welcome you to contact our organizers of this webinar workshop course and participate with us in this noble project, inshallah. Yes, it's permissible. You print out the Arabic and you print out the English meaning for reflection, for understanding, or whatever language is your main language. You put it in that language that you would reflect on what Allah is saying. Yes, it's permissible. There is no international standard. Some countries, have standards set. Some schools have standards set. Some systems, educational groups have set standards, but I don't know of any single standard which we can say is truly a global international standard. We would like to develop that for Islamized lesson plans, inshallah, in the future. Well, again, we have to recognize that there's a clear allowance given by the practice of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ for the use of images for children, for their educational purpose or for their play. The Prophet ﷺ permitted Aisha to have a doll, horse with wings. The Sahaba made dolls for the kids during Ramadan to keep them busy, to play and continue their fast. So we know for children that it is permissible. Whether the face is there or not, people argue, oh, well, maybe in those days the face was like this, or, it didn't have eyes, we don't need to go into all of that. The point of the image is there. The Prophet ﷺ permitted it. We use it as it's needed for our children. Well, if the lesson plans are for grades, you're not a teacher, so your lesson plan is going to be for what? If you're taking a grade, if you know somebody who is a teacher and you just like to do it, you like to participate in the process. So it's for a particular age group, it's a particular grade, particular subjects, and we welcome it. Welcome. Okay, alhamdulillah. Barakallah fikum. I'd like to thank you all, those of you that attended. We hope that you benefited from it, and you will share this benefit with others to make this a movement globally, to influence our schools to work towards Islamizing their curriculums, so that the benefit from Islamic schools can be really realized, that we can see and feel and experience the benefit from properly Islamized Islamic schools. Because we do hold firm to the motto of the Islamic Online University, changing the nation through education. And that education, if it's not Islamized, then it's doing damage. So we need to realize this responsibility as educators. Those of you that have joined this program as an educator, recognize it's your duty to Allah, it's your duty to your students, for you to be truly Muslim educators, changing the Ummah, benefiting the Ummah, and worshiping Allah through your profession, a noble profession, the profession of the prophets. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was the teacher first and foremost. After being a believer who submitted himself to Allah, he taught what he learned. And as the Prophet ﷺ had said, خَيْرُكُمْ مَنْ تَعَلَّمَ الْقُرْآنَ وَعَلَّمَهُ, the best of you are those who learn the Quran and teach it to others, who learn it and teach it. Not necessarily memorize it and help others memorize, but learn it, understand it, and teach it. So with that, I bid you all farewell until we meet again in another webinar in the future. بارك الله فيكم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك.